Hi, welcome to the Wellness Journey, Secrets to Jumpstart Your Health. This is Sarah Buck. She is a lifelong learner and she has certifications in many things, including nutrition, massage therapy, Reiki, spiritual response therapy, and much more. Thank you for being here, Sarah. How are you today?
Hi, Sharon. I'm doing great. Thank you for having me here.
I'm so glad you are here. Now, what got you interested in nutrition, energy, healing, and spiritual healing?
I think I came in being interested. It took, I think it took certain life experiences to
Mm,
really take me to the place where I spent time learning them. But the curiosity and interest in it have always been there.
okay.
So it was probably when I really started getting into this integrative nutrition, more of a whole body, whole systems perspective on how we address our health, was my dad had been diagnosed with cancer.
Oh,
And so, I was walking with him through that journey, and I've always had an aversion to a conventional approach to healthcare. I've avoided hospitals as much as absolutely possible.
mm,
So I think just having that predisposition and a general sense that there's more to this than just isolating something. It's more interconnected than that. So
okay. Very good. Now, what is spiritual response
mm,
therapy and what are the benefits? I love
that's a
this
great
question.
question.
Yeah, I love this question too, because I'm like, I want to know, and I'm sure everybody else wants to know.
Everybody wants to know, and I feel like I ultimately always give an extraordinarily ambiguous answer. Almost as ambiguous as the name spiritual response therapy itself, because it's absolutely one of those modalities that once you experience it, you're like, oh, now I get it. But to describe it can be like a bit of a slippery fish. But what's happening logistically, I work with a pendulum and I work with a number of charts, and I am just facilitating information coming through my physical body as like an energy system, so a conduit for information. So that's kind of determining how the pendulum moves and guiding me towards information, that's basically pulling information from the subconscious field into the conscious
Mm,
field, so then it can be worked with more intentionally. um, so SRT, spiritual response therapy often goes by SRT,
okay.
and like the first letters of each word, right?
Right.
And the idea is you want to work with trauma. So trauma being, this definition of trauma is basically meaning you've made out of experiences you've had that then they become your computer programming, and they're an overlay to your blueprint, right? So they're imprints that you pick up in childhood, in the womb. This modality also works with past lives, so it could even be like information, your energy you're bringing in from just kind of like different fields. It can be ancestral, intergenerational types
Oh,
of
wow.
belief systems and patterns, because this is all just held in our energy, right?
Uh-huh.
And this modality is going like straight to the source. So we're working with that, and then conditioning that we pick up that we are just not immune to in any way, shape, or form, especially in this society. Where we come in and our parents have ideas about how they parent, and we pick that up, or like what it is to be a boy, what it is to be a girl, like all of this implicit information that we are just absorbing without even knowing it. And especially at such a young age where we don't have the cognitive development to rationalize what's happening. We just make meaning and we tuck it away, and it's survival.
Mm,
So it like keeps us in connection. We lose our connection to our authenticity in order to stay in connection with our caregivers, because that's what we need to do for survival. So all that information stored in the energy field and remains unexamined for the most part. So this modality helps us go in and see like what's anchoring why I feel stuck here. What's anchoring, like, why am I getting mad at my kids? My kids aren't doing anything I should be getting mad about, right? How that stuff starts to come out sideways. So this really helps to pull some threads that we can then follow, and then more can shift after that. But it's like you need a doorway. So that's ultimately kind of what SRT does. And inevitably, if we're getting rid of stuff that's not us, right? Because anything that's on top of our blueprint is really not us. It's maybe something for us to work with and to learn through. But the more we get rid of that, the more we, like, our energy just kind of expands, right? We have more spaciousness. We actually can experience more fulfillment. And just like my own personal experiences, I can have just a greater sense of wonder at the most mundane thing, walking outside and seeing buds on a tree. And I'm just like, I gotta catch my breath, like, it really surprises. It sounds so silly to say it out loud, but it's really an amazing shift that happens, that you can just have that sense of, you can settle into your body. Because with the trauma there, like, that's not a safe place.
Right.
So moving that stuff out really lets you to come into an embodied experience of the world around you. And I really feel like that's what fulfillment is. We're filling ourselves.
Yeah. That's very fascinating. I'm sure most people don't even really know much about it at all.
No, and it's so true. I feel like the community of practitioners is still relatively small. It's global, but there's just not a lot of people who I feel like come into contact with the work, at least at this point. But
yeah,
the more the better, in my opinion.
Right? So now, do you have to work one-on-one? Are you able to do it virtually?
That's a really great question. All of my work is remote. So I typically have a conversation with somebody who's interested in the work and just get an idea of, like, what kinds of things are you wrestling with? And then we'll set an intention around that specific piece, because then that, like, takes us into the energy field. Like, that's obviously what's up and wants attention anyway.
Yeah.
And so then the sessions are usually around 60 minutes, and I just kind of go through my I have an initial protocol to get started, and then I just get directed to different charts and work with different information that comes to light, wrap it up, send it off to my client. And then I really like to talk afterwards to integrate, right? Because it's like, we have these habitual patterned ways of being. So even if you shift the energy field, if you're not bringing your consciousness and intention to noticing that you're reenacting these patterns, you're just going to reset that energy field back. So it's like, well, that seems like a waste of time and money.
Right? Exactly.
Gone through that whole thing and then not taken. And to a certain degree, there's always benefit, because there's just, like, some shift, some change. But it really, I think it's extraordinarily important to find different people, like coaches or different modalities that you can then use as tools in your toolbox to help just create a different way of engaging with your world.
Yes.
It also just, it brings more maturity into the system. You differentiate more from that, all this conditioning and imprints and programming, these ideas that were somebody else's. You have to differentiate for those in order to really, like, come into a solid sense of self.
Yes.
Then your authentic self just has a bigger vehicle to drive.
That's great. But that's really good, because then you do get to be the person you really are.
Oh,
we're meant to
exactly.
be. Yeah.
And I feel like we all crave it and we're hungry for it, and we don't necessarily know how to get there. So this is something that really, like, just shakes some stuff loose. And then, we have to just kind of have that internal desire and motivation, because they can just, like, when you start on this, you've built, in all likelihood, a life on a very false foundation. So
Right.
it's like, it's going to get messy as you figure out what belongs and what doesn't. So it's really not for the faint of heart.
Yeah. It takes a lot of work.
Keep this toxic stuff over here, because it's like a pain in the ass to not do it. You're like, it's like holding your feet to the fire. That's for sure.
That is true.
But I think there's lots of people out there with that desire and that drive that is like, come what may, this is the most important thing. Like, for me, having young kids, I want them to live into their potential. That means I have to show them how to do it. So I don't feel like I have a choice about whether or not I hold my feet to the fire if I want it for them.
Right.
So, like, if I want you to be your authentic self, I have to get rid of all the crap that's not me.
That's true. And that's good that you want to show them that. Because they need to see that to be able to do it themselves.
Totally. And I think it changes the world the way we parent our kids, the way we do the birth culture, because that sets the trauma in immediately. You know, when we have this message that, or this experience, especially with the like pathologizing of childbirth, we're like, take the child away from the mom right away. Well, there's a psychology that sets in immediately that my caregiver is not here. It's that abandonment wound and that rejection wound, because you don't have the cognitive capacity to be like, oh, these people care about me too. And they're just like making sure I'm healthy. No, it's like the only being I've ever known. And my instinctual response to go to this person is severed.
Right.
What am I going to do now?
Yeah.
And that sets us up. Like there is a cascade and there's long lasting consequences to setting up that kind of psychology. And so I feel like when we can really embrace the practices necessary to establish a secure connection between caregivers and infants, like that starts changing everything.
Wow. Never thought of it that way. That's a good one.
Gosh, it was really powerful information for me to come into contact with, right? And then I can unwind my own stuff, because I was born at a time where the message was very strong. I mean, for decades, it's been really strong, right? Of like, okay, mom doesn't like, let's drug mom. Let's take the baby away right away. Please don't breastfeed. It's, you know, like all the messaging around not breastfeeding. Right. And so it was just, it's so normalized. Like, yes. Traumatic birth process is very normalized. So it's like, well, how bad could it have been? Like everybody goes through that. Like, well, look at the world right now. How bad was it? Right? It's not like we can ignore that there's actually a connection there. We can try, but it's going to show up anyway.
Hopefully we can change that, right?
Oh, and we are. Like
we are.
Every person who's doing this work and every person who's doing like incremental things to create healthier connections where we don't have to sacrifice our connection to ourselves in order to experience that bond. Everyone who's doing every bit of that work is contributing to that build of energy and that shift.
Which is nice when anybody's doing a small thing, it's like, it will affect the whole world, you know, little by little.
Yeah. I have a woman who I work with. She works a lot with people and talks about the nervous system. And she says, once the behavior begins, like 2/3 of the nervous system's wiring for that behavior has already been taken care of. All the behind the scenes stuff that much of the behind the scenes stuff is done. So when you start seeing the behavior, so much has already been done. Wow. So it's like, and you know, the nervous system, it's like whatever fires together, wires together, and how we create this is how habituated patterns are, right? Like we have neural grooves. It's the path of least resistance. So when we've done all the work to create a new path of least resistance, it's a lot easier to get out of that old track. And it loses its priority.
Yes. Excellent. That's so exciting to hear too. And I think so many of us and so many of our listeners needed to hear that. So excellent. Now, I know you also practice Reiki. How is Reiki different from spiritual response therapy?
You know, it's a little bit paradoxical because like they're not different at all. Oh. And they're very different. Ultimately, I feel like any healing modality, the end game is to work with the energy field. If you know, for people who are familiar with the work of someone like Bruce Lipton, where you see that it's the energy field that determines what manifests physically, right? So I think every way we try to do that, whether it's nutrition, whether it's energy work, whether it's like lifting weights at the gym, we're trying to we're just using different doorways to access our energy. And so I feel like Reiki is another doorway to access the energy field. So I did my Reiki training 12 years ago. And I did my SRT training about 5 years ago. So, you know, the practical application of both of them are different because I feel like I don't necessarily, and I think people who practice Reiki ultimately get information in different ways, but I don't get it through words and I don't get it through concepts. Like I can kind of feel energy and intuit when to move around the body or how to, you know, like how to support the energy field. But I'm a very, like you said, I'm a lifelong learner. I'm a very hungry student. So the fact that I get information that I can weave with different intellectual concepts that I've studied I
Yeah.
have so much fun with it. Right. So I gravitate towards a modality that's like, has a hard and fast way of giving me information. And then I can like make artwork with that. Whereas the Reiki, I feel, at least the way I practice it, is much more nuanced and subtle
Okay.
in terms of the information I get. I know there's lots of people out there who are like, colors and it, you know, the energy field talk to me in this way, and but that's just not the way I receive information. So
Okay.
that's, you know, I hesitate to make a blanket statement about the way they're different, just because I know the way in which they're different for me, but that doesn't
Right.
mean somebody else who practiced both would experience them as different in the same way. So
Okay.
with that caveat, that's how they're a little different and how they're a little.
Now, what are a few techniques people can use today to boost their well-being?
You know, I feel like, so for the past 2 years, I've really just had my own feet to the fire kind of journey. So I
Mhm.
have definitely worked daily with different practices. And for me, what has just been integral, at least to start stabilizing, being able to work more deeply, prayer has been something I've worked with.
Yeah.
It, every day. Prayer and meditation. So quiet
Awesome.
space that's dedicated just to me. It doesn't mean it's quiet up here, but it means like I'm taking the time and giving it to myself. I'm not taking care of the dogs. I'm not taking care of the kids. I'm just like giving that time to myself and nourishing myself that way. And I feel like the consistency of doing that
Uh-huh.
has then, like, I have built trust in my own system that I will take care of myself, where that wasn't there before, because I'm like, I'm just too busy to do that. Like, I'm going to neglect myself before I and take care of everything else and everyone else before I take care of myself. So
Mm.
bringing that in, I think, has been integral to building trust to do anything else. Because how is your energy field going to let you in if it doesn't trust you?
Right?
You know, like, we're so good at bracing and armoring and blocking. Like, no, sorry, no one's getting in. So I think that's really important. Prayer has been super important to me, just because I feel like that helps me put faith in the how things unfold.
Yes.
Like, I don't know. I have my own plan for things, and we'll just see how this goes, because my plan is not the ultimate plan. You know, like, there's another plan working its way out through me, and I haven't been in contact long enough with, you know, my own soul contract with my own authentic expression long enough to know what that is, but I know I can trust it. So that's been another one. And then EFT tapping. Have you interviewed anybody who's doing tapping?
No,
Okay, so
no.
emotional freedom technique is what EFT stands for. And it's, you tap on different acupressure points,
Mhm.
and usually with a script. And there's a gentleman by the name of Brad Yates, who I absolutely love, and he's got thousands of YouTube videos, and he's like funny and quirky, and the YouTube videos are like 5 to 10 minutes long, and so you can type in anything basically under the sun, and he's probably got a video for it. You know, so if I'm bumping up against like, why do I keep taking responsibility for other people's guilt? Like, why am I feeling guilty for that person? Right? There's a video for it. So he says the script, and you just like do the different tapping points. And for me, that really just like, okay, now the energy's moving, right?
Uh-huh.
To work with it in different ways. So I would do that a lot. And then another way I interpreted that is like, if you look at old photos, you know how you just like have an emotional response or a visceral
Oh,
response
yeah.
going through old photos from high school. Like, wow, I cannot believe how much negative energy I'm holding on this version of myself. Like,
Yes.
the expectations I had, you know, I expected perfection out of this person, and they did not give it to me, and I'm still pissed. So like, I could look at the picture and just tap on these points and like, I love you. I know you did the best you could. And then you can feel the energy shift. And so now I can look at those photos and I'm like, oh God, it was hard for her, but I'm proud of her. Right? It's just like, you totally change your relationship to yourself. So I feel like those are really fundamental access points that are simple, that don't take very much time, but building trust in the field between you and yourself. Like, conscious me with little me, or
Right.
subconscious me, or like, you know, because we have all these facets to who we are.
Yes, we
So
do.
like, to have them in coherence with each other is super helpful. And I can see the world at large more clearly, because there isn't confusion between all the parts of me anymore. right?
So
Like
did you
all the
teach?
parts of me can see themselves more clearly. So we see the world more clearly.
Yeah. Did you teach yourself how to do it through?
EFT,
Yeah.
gosh, I guess so. I mean, as much as you can teach yourself how to do anything that requires somebody to show you how to do it, right? Like I didn't take a course in it, if
Okay.
that's what you're asking. Like I don't have credentials or initials or anything that says like I don't have an expensive piece of paper for that.
You didn't
But
take out a loan for that?
I know. I can't think of the guy's name, unfortunately, who, basically brought this work into being, but he's out there on YouTube. And you can
Well,
watch videos and he will explain, there's like what this modality is, why it works the way it does, and here's how you do it. And of course, as with most modalities, he starts with a very specific script. But I think as you work with it, you find like your own organic access points to it with it, right?
well, I'm
You
glad
can,
you brought it up because I've been very, very interested in it. I've seen
oh, cool.
articles and other things on, especially even working with kids and how it's helped them,
Yeah.
because these kids that have problems, in school, and
Oh,
then, and they've taught these kids how to do the tapping themselves. So if they
Yeah.
get in this situation or this emotion, they can
Yeah.
tap themselves out of it. And I love
That's what we need. I think we
Yeah.
need to teach ourselves and our children, like, let's empower ourselves to know what to do in the moment instead of to look outside ourselves.
Right.
So like, I am in distress and I don't know what to do. Well, here, try this. It's so simple. And
Yeah.
I feel like that if it works, great. If it's placebo, great. Who cares? Right?
Exactly.
Like, you know what to do to take care of yourself here. That underpins everything.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. That is very fascinating information. And I'm glad you brought it up because that was one of my questions. And I was hoping I'd find somebody to speak about it. So, and then poof, you just brought it up.
Well, isn't it wild how you can throw it out there and these connections find their way through. So
Exactly.
yeah, I feel like having things that are simple, that don't take a lot of time, that aren't difficult to kind of make your own.
Yeah.
They're really powerful.
Mhm.
Undervalued and very powerful.
Right? Yeah. Now, before we have to go, what else would you like to share with us and give us information on?
Oh gosh. Well, I really appreciate that we've been able to cover so many aspects that I feel very strongly about in this work. I think probably just one last thing that informs my work a lot is called family constellation therapy. There was a German psychologist by the name of Bert Hellinger who brought this into being. But it's a way of working with ancestral trauma. Because I feel like we have, as a culture, and really as a human race, we've been so separated from the origins of these ancient traditions
Mhm.
that like had practices for how we grieve, how we celebrate, right? We did it as a collective. We honor the process of other people rather than like, oh God, I feel so bad when they feel bad. I have to do whatever it takes to keep them from feeling bad, right? So, and then it also separates us from our own people, like grandparents, great grandparents. Not that they don't care about us or care for us, but that we're just kind of like, oh, God, like they just keep doing the thing, whether it's the codependent thing or the alcoholic thing or and there's so much judgment. And so to like bring healing into our own family systems, and how so often I feel like children are asked to caretake the emotions of their parents when, like we have been dumbed down emotionally, which creates this inversion and confusion in a family system. And when there's more health in the entire family system, we thrive. Like, I don't need to be carrying my mom's backpack of garbage.
Right.
It's not helping me. It's not helping my kids. So we can interrupt that. We can give it back to them. Like, I honor you and I see you.
Yes.
This is my gift I can give to you. Your experience is yours. I'm not going to carry it anymore. Please bless me as I do it differently. So that's a really, that work really informs the SRT practice that I do because it's so important to me, right? It's like the ideas around birth and attachment, the ideas around how we relate to our ancestors, and then like how we recover our sense of self. So I think they're all, you can't separate them from each other. So I just kind of want to make my plug for, family constellation therapy is in and of itself its own modality that's extraordinarily fascinating and really powerful. It's like you don't have to try to integrate that stuff. It's like, guess what? I'm here to integrate. So, and it complements this work really well, but it definitely informs the way I speak when I work in a session and with my clients. So.
That is very fascinating, very good information. And yeah, so if people want to find you, how do they find you?
Yeah. So I have a website that is my name, Sarah, SARAH, the letter K, and Buck, BUCK.com. And it's a great entry point. It talks a little bit about my work, but I also have a YouTube channel with a few videos that I'm slowly building an archive there where you can access, like I introduce this work, and then there are some videos where you can also experience this work. So it's a really great entry point for somebody who's curious about it. And everything else is there, right? There's like how to contact, and if you want to learn more, like all these pieces are there, so you can kind of poke around.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank you again for being here on the Wellness Journey Summit. I really appreciate you, and I have had so much fun, and you've given us great information. So I thank you again.
Oh, you're so welcome. I feel like an honored guest. So I very much appreciate
you're so
the
sweet.
opportunity to connect with you and, anybody who is able to watch and connects with this work. I just feel like I'm a vehicle for it, right? It's not mine. So like, let it come through and find who it needs. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Sarah. And we will talk again soon then.
Absolutely.
Okay. Bye, Sarah.
Bye.